In today's episode, I want to focus on a genre of animation that I think doesn't get enough attention, and that is education specifically geared for adults. Now, this isn't really a trend because it's been around for a while, but I think that recently a few new series have come out that really brought to my attention the idea that adults are ready for kind of a little bit more serious, a little bit more enlightening form of adult animation. And so I thought I would take an episode to kind of highlight those new series and also just in total give you four really good examples of animation that is education for adults. So I think it's really important, especially now because we're all wanting something more out of our media. And hey, what do you know? Cartoons might just be good for you. Hey there, happy 2021, and welcome back to Surviving Animation, your guide to making it in the business of cartoons. My name is Eric Calderon. Today we're talking about the genre of animation that I call education for adults. So before I kind of get into that, I want to actually give a special thank you to Cartoon Brew, who once again wrote a very nice article about me and my summary of 2020 business trends in animation. So it was just really great. It brought a lot of new subscribers to the channel. Cartoon Brew is not actually a sponsor of this channel, but I really love them. I love their journalistic work, and I go to them daily to find out what's happening. So follow them at cartoonbrew.com or follow them on LinkedIn, where I also follow them. And I'm also personally very active on LinkedIn, so follow me there too. So, and if you haven't, I don't say this very often. If you're watching and you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe. I really appreciate it. And okay, let's get right into animation education for adults. About a week ago, Netflix launched a series called Headspace Guide to Meditation. So, this is actually based on an online platform and an app of the same name. So, if you go to the App Store and you look up Headspace, you'll actually find this app that says Your Guide to Mindfulness for Your Everyday Life. Learn meditation and mindfulness skills from world class experts. So, the app version has something like 687,000 ratings and is currently like a 4.9 out of 5 in terms of apps. And on top of that, it also seems to be awarded editor's choice over there. So, Headspace itself was actually launched in 2010, and the entire effort is closely associated with the founder, this guy named Andy Puddicombe. So he's the CEO, and he actually was famous for cutting short his like sports and science degree to become a Buddhist monk. And for like a decade, this guy went across like Nepal and India and Burma and Thailand. And if you go to Headspace's website, they actually say that the entire effort, founded and curated by Andy himself, has one mission, which is to improve the health and happiness of the world. So, what's fascinating about this whole brand when it goes into animation, it gets interpreted into these 8 episodes that are like, kind of hypnotizingly beautiful, and they essentially really only have one character, and that character is one you never see. It's actually the entire series is voiced by Andy Puddicombe himself, and he literally never appears as a character. He's just a narrating voice. So instead, you get a selection of really wildly imaginative and different visuals from at least two animation production companies I know. One is called Strange Beast. They're based in the UK, and the other is Augenblick Studios that are based in Brooklyn. So all of that is under the direction of Vox Media and then Headspace Studios, which I assume is like the entertainment studio division of the Headspace company. So, I looked up a little bit about Aaron Augenblick, and he's a guy I know. I've worked with in the past, and when he talked about how his studio was approaching the Headspace animated series, he said, and I quote, "They wanted to do something more experimental, a lot more artistic." So he then went on to say, I quote, "It was really more about evoking the mood and the kind of simplicity of it rather than matching exact designs or characters." So he even then says, I quote, "What we were inspired by for episodes were impressionists like Miro. They were like, how do we represent happiness but not do it in a corny way?" So what they ended up doing is really animating what he calls pleasing shapes and pleasing colors. So Headspace as a series is really just this. So it's an entire animated series where it's like a podcast from a thought leader, and there are these just awesome, trippy visuals. So I don't know, check it out. It's really good. All right, the next series I want to talk about isn't so much a series as it is a YouTube channel that's actually full of animation. So that is TED Ed. So TED Ed is a sub brand of TED, who you know already probably from those inspirational speeches and kind of staged events they always do with these brilliant authors and opinion leaders around the world. Well, the TED Ed YouTube channel is really like a huge operation that I just somehow missed, but kind of came upon it recently again, which is like 13 million subscribers. And there are, I kid you not, like 1,000 videos there that are, 8 to 10 years old when you go way, way back in their library. But really interestingly, if you look at the most recent, like 800 videos, they're all fully animated. And so they cover these wild range of kind of digestible little factoids and interesting topics. I mean, they have one called The Future of Food. They do the life cycle of coffee, and they actually have a little thing about how personality tests work. I'm kind of addicted to it because it's easy to kind of absorb these little 5 6 minute bits of really compacted information. So two of my favorites are actually what are those floaty things in your eyes? So if you're curious, they're actually called muscae volitantes. But the entire thing in general is called the blue field entopic phenomena. So there you go, you learned something. And they also do a really interesting one called The Dark History of Bananas. So, these little bursts of information, they're all narrated. They have very simple, but, kind of charming animation style. And by YouTube standards, they're actually pretty successful. So some of them do about 100,000 to 2 or 300,000 views per video. But some of the more viral topics, some of the more interesting, really catchy, get at the right moment cultural ideas, are like 21 and 22 million views. So TED Ed, great educational animation channel for adults. All right, if we're going to talk about educational animation channels on YouTube, we have to bring up one whose name I really hope I'm not brutally mispronouncing because it's a German word. It's Kurzgazakt. So Kurzgazakt, in a nutshell, is a place where they describe themselves as videos explaining things with optimistic nihilism. They say they're a small team who wants to make science look beautiful because it is beautiful. So they're at like 13.8 million subscribers and they post a video about once a month. Now, what Kurzgesagt does is similar to TED Ed in that they take these simple quandaries or these ideas and they try to discuss them in a narrated, animated segment. But where they differ is that Kurzgesagt focuses specifically on science. So what they do with science is they explore these deep cosmic ideas, or sometimes they actually go into like some medical idea, but they really try to stick to science. So there's no culture or history or mythology or politics, which TED Ed does. Kurzgesagt is like pure science. So they even do things that feel like science fiction. So there's an episode they did called what if the Earth was kicked out of the solar system? But when they analyze it, they actually use the best science they can find. And there's kind of a general dry wit, and it actually looks like it's like 60 frames per second, stunning, visual execution. So check it out. I think what they do, which I really like, is they have this unified art direction. They use After Effects for all their animation, but it's done very thoughtfully. And it's kind of bold in that you always know when you're watching a Kurzgesagt video the moment you see it. So I will actually say, even though it's a YouTube channel, try to watch it as big as you can. So if you can throw YouTube up on a TV and watch it in like 4K, it's like just these hypnotizing, wonderful visuals and a lot of really great science, which is fun to listen to. So when I watch it, I sometimes feel like I'm watching someone play like Apple Arcade. If you have like an Apple TV and stuff like that, but it's got this like Britishy narrator. It's really cool. Just check it out. And I'll try one more time. Kurzgesagt in a nutshell. Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb on this one, but let me just say right now, I think Midnight Gospel is education for adults. Now, obviously, it's much more than that, and in many ways, it's hard to categorize. So, which is probably why it's so good. But in terms of genre, when I think of how it's presented, it's an expert opinion talk show base at its core, and it bends and twists a narrative on top of that. But it's basically like opinion and information presented in a way that it's an interview structure. So Duncan Trussell, one of the co-creators, is himself an actor, comedian, and most importantly, a podcaster. And he's got a series called Duncan Trussell Family Hour, which is the place where most of his guest stars actually come from. So if you look at the cast of the show, they gather a bunch of psychoanalytical experts, comedians, activists, and novelists. They've got Dr. Drew and Lamont, and my favorite of the series, Duncan's own mother, Deneen Fendig, who actually sadly passed away in 2013. And the episode where she's in, it's so good. It's so emotional. I am not ashamed to admit I openly cried watching it. It was really, really beautifully done. But on top of that, the show even brought like this guy named Damien Eccles, who's like a unique figure in that he was at one point sentenced to death for being part of what was called the Memphis Three, and he spent 18 years in prison. So, uh, but now after all of that, he actually is a firm believer in magic. He's kind of an expert on the subject matter, and he attributes magic on how we survive death row. So, regardless if we may or may not think of them, his character in the series is mesmerizing. But what Midnight Gospel does is it creates the format by which the character narrator Duncan actually gets to interview and get all this amazing, interesting information out of these people who've lived these fantastic, wonderful, strange, compelling lives and have a lot to say about the point of view they have on the universe and the world and the mind, the heart, and life and death. So anyway, like I said, it's kind of hard to understand just how wildly original and striking and emotional and educational this series is. And, if that's not enough, the other co-creator is Pendleton Ward, who is, the legendary creator of Adventure Time, who brought to the table this absolutely brand new, I'll call it simple and also awe-inspiring animation, character design, and style. And then, the people at Titmouse with all of their incredible capacity, made this series. So it's just one of the best things out there. I feel like I've already said too much. Just watch it now. You'll never forget it. But I'm going to state that I think it's an educational series. So in summarizing this video about animation and its educational capacity for adults, I do think it's just important to talk about and to remember that's one of the possibilities out there whenever you're thinking about doing an animated series. I mean, the idea of combining information with visuals, there's an unlimited amount of source material and an endless assortment of unique ways which you can present information and kind of a combination of documentary and entertainment. And I think that the possibilities of doing education for grown-ups in animation in some ways is more interesting and more compelling than their live action counterparts. So anyway, on top of that, if you're just watching it, and you're watching cartoons and you happen to learn a little bit of history or learn more about science or even get a little insight into mental health and emotional stability, because there's a lot of programs out there that are really just there to help you be a happier person, well, hey, that sounds pretty good to me. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.